Hello, today I'm going to show you how to make a room-based camera in Godot, similar to what you might see in the top-down Legend of Zelda games. Here in this test scene, we have 4 rooms that are designated by these different textures. They're different sizes so that we can demonstrate how the camera functions when it's in a room that is the same size as the camera, a room that is bigger than the camera, and a room that is smaller than the camera. So, just to demonstrate the scene, we just have this basic scene that doesn't follow the player yet, and we can move the player around. So let's start by adding a camera to the player. We'll open this up and we'll set the camera to current so that it follows the player, and we'll start our scene again. So now we can see the scene is following the player, we can collide with the geometry, everything looks good, but we want the camera to snap to whatever room you're in. So the way we're going to achieve this is by using the limits in the camera. So we can manually create a limit that is the same size as the first room by specifying these values. So now it looks like what it did originally, where the camera wasn't moving at all. But this time the camera is just limited, so it can't really follow the player. So next, we have to figure out how we're going to get the values, the sizes and positions of the different rooms to the player code so that it knows how to update the camera limits. So to do that, we're going to create an area 2D for each of these rooms. We'll add a rectangle shape and we'll set the bounds. When you're creating these shapes, remember that these values are half the size that you actually want. So now you'll see that it's the correct size to that room. Next, we're going to duplicate this and put it in each of the rooms. So a good thing to note about these collision shapes, though, is that they're shared between each of the duplicates because it's a resource. So to make it not shared, we'll click this drop down and then click Make Unique. Then we're going to reset the transform here, and that'll put our room in the correct location. So let's duplicate it again. Right there. We'll make this unique, and then we're going to change the size again for the third room, and then we'll reset the transform again. One more time for the smaller room. Make unique. Set the size. And then reset the transform. Finally, we don't want the rooms to have the same layer as the walls. So instead of using the wall layer, we're going to use a new layer called room. And we'll also turn off monitoring for each of these. Okay, so now we have an area 2D for each of the rooms that specifies the position and size of that room. What we want to do next is we want to detect when the player has entered one of those rooms. So we're going to add an area 2D to the player. And we're going to set the size of that area 2D to the size of the player. We want to set the collision to be with rooms. And then I'm going to rename it to room detector so that it's obvious what it does. Finally, we need to link the area entered function for the room detector or signal to the player script. So let's do that. So now we have this. So we'll know when we entered a room. So we'll start by getting the collision shape. Then we're going to get the size of the shape. The reason I'm multiplying by 2 here is because the size is halved when we set it in the editor. Then we're going to get the camera where we want to set the limits. Now we update the limits. So we're going to set the top left corner, and the top left corner is going to be equal to the collision shape's position minus half of the width. So, or half of the size, because the collision shape position is actually the middle of the shape instead of the corner. Put an extra L in there. Okay. Now we want to set the bottom right corner. And to do this, we're actually just going to reuse the existing value that we just calculated. And we're going to add the size. So now let's test out our scene. So we're in the first room. Now we switch to the second room, third room, and in the third room, the room is bigger than the camera, so it scrolls with the player as long as you haven't hit one of the boundaries. Okay, and now let's go to the final room. And you'll see there's a problem. The room is now on the right side of the screen. What we'd want instead is for the room to be centered. What's happening is that the size of the room is actually smaller than the camera, so the limits don't update properly. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to check for if the size of the room is smaller than the size of the camera. So let's go back to our code. And we'll get the view size like that. And then if the size So essentially what we're doing here is we're just setting the minimum size a room can be. So if the Y size of the room is smaller than the Y size of the view, we'll just set the size to the view size, and the same for the X. This has the effect of centering the camera when we're in a room smaller than the view size. So now you'll see that it's centered. So in conclusion, we've made a pretty simple camera system that allows us to set the camera within the bounds of a room in your top-down game. I'll leave a link to the project in the description of this video so that you can see the code and just copy it, or you're free to use this tutorial to write it out yourself. Thanks for watching. Bye.